Canada begins process to extradite Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou to America. Carrie Lam meets with Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Chief Jiang Xiaoming in Beijing. And Commerce Secretary hits back at US diplomats' remarks on Hong Kong autonomy.
Good evening. The Canadian government has approved extradition proceedings against the chief financial officer of Huawei Technologies, prompting a furious reaction from Beijing. Canadian Department of Justice officials issued a statement saying they diligently reviewed the evidence and the case can go ahead. Alan Buknia reports.
Meng Wanzhou, the daughter of Huawei's founder, was detained in Vancouver last December at the request of U.S. authorities. They accuse her of conspiring to mislead banks on the company's dealings with Iran, violating U.S. sanctions. The case has sparked a diplomatic furor among the three countries and severely damaged Ottawa's relations with China, which arrested two Canadians in an attempt to pressure Canada to release Meng. In Beijing, the Foreign Ministry said it firmly opposes the Canadian side's obstinately moving forward with the case and said Canada and the U.S. were abusing their extradition treaty. Huawei is the biggest global supplier of network gear for phones and internet companies. Washington has pressured other countries to limit use of its technology, warning that they could be opening themselves up to surveillance and theft of information. The U.S. and China have tried to keep Meng's case separate from their wider trade dispute. But U.S. President Donald Trump has undercut that intent, saying he might intervene in the case if it would help forge a deal. However, last week he played down the idea of dropping the charges. But it could be years before Meng is sent to the United States, since Canada's slow-moving justice system allows many decisions to be appealed. Meng is due in court on March 6th, at which time a date for her extradition hearing will be set. In the meantime, she's out on bail and living in one of her two Vancouver mansions. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has asked China to immediately remove all tariffs on American agricultural products because trade talks are moving along nicely. Trump's tweeted request came several hours after the US Trade Representative's office said it would delay the scheduled hike in tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports. Trump explained that his request is very important for US farmers, a key constituency for Republicans. Beijing welcomed Washington's delay in raising tariffs from 10 to 25%.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam met with the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office today, and that is one day before the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference opens its annual session in Beijing tomorrow. Our Christy Lung with that story.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam spends the morning at the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office with its director Jiang Xiaoming. She was accompanied by Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Patrick Nip and the Chief Executive's Office Director Chen Kuo-ki. The meeting was nearly 2 hours. Both the director and the chief executive did not take questions from the media afterwards. These included questions on whether Hong Kong independence was discussed during the meeting. Sources say the chief executive then paid a visit to the China National Radio and attended an event at the National Palace Museum. In the next few days, she is expected to visit various ministries as well as see Hong Kong people who live in the capital. Like last year, Lam will attend the opening ceremony when the annual session of the National People's Congress begins on Tuesday. A Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference opens its annual session in Beijing tomorrow. CPPCC National Committee spokesman Guo Weiming said meetings will discuss the developments of the Greater Bay Area, including the promotion of exchanges among young people. During the press conference, a reporter from Kazakhstan raised questions about concerns that China is entrapping countries with debt and pushing regional hegemony through the Belt and Road Initiative. Guo said the initiative has nothing to do with regional hegemony. He added the project gives hope to developing countries and China would have more and more friends. Christy Leung, TVB News.
Commerce Secretary Edward Yao has hit back at suggestions from the U.S. Consul General in Hong Kong, who said that Beijing's political intervention would hurt the city's reputation and economy. In a radio program today, Yao rejected the opinions of the Consul General, Kurt Tong, who made the remarks in a speech on Thursday. Yao says Hong Kong is internationally regarded as a place that acts in accordance with the law. He added one should not cherry-pick incidents and be respectful. That's as Tong expressed concern over the city's autonomy, noting a series of unfortunate firsts last year, including the first banning of a political party. Yao stressed that despite the controversy, the events were dealt with in accordance with the principle of one country, two systems.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan has defended his decision to scrap the housing reserve and return some $80 billion of funds back to the government's coffers. Our Haley Zhou reports.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan said housing reserves will be consolidated back into the government's account over the next 4 years.
In order to promote transparency and also to enable the public to have a better understanding of the strength of the financial position of the government, we think it is appropriate to bring back this off-account item back to the financial account of the government.
The housing reserve was established in 2014 to support the 10-year public housing supply target. The government has been transferring tens of billions of dollars from the government's fiscal reserves to the housing reserve each year to fund the construction of public flats and related infrastructure. Today, it stands at $82.4 billion. Yet Chen dismissed claims that this move is to hide potential budget deficits.
The housing authority's financial position is very strong, and they forecast a few years later they still have a reserve of over 40 billion Hong Kong dollar.
But yesterday, the secretary implied there may not be generous cash handouts or tax cuts in the coming years, saying without the housing reserve, the government will be in the red next year.
If we exclude the housing reserve to be written back to the account, the coming year will be a deficit to the order of about 5 billion.
Also this morning, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Edward Yao dismissed calls for more support measures for businesses. Instead, he urged companies to look for new markets beyond China and the rest of Asia to sustain their businesses amid trade tensions. He also said the support measures for enterprises announced in the budget have been formulated with both short and long-term considerations. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Overseas again, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un dominated the spotlight on his final day in Vietnam, 2 days after his summit with US President Donald Trump failed to yield results. While many fear the collapse could plunge the region back to uncertainty and terror, many analysts say the summit helped cement Kim's image as a proper world leader. 2 days after talks with US President Donald Trump broke down, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un embarked on a one-man show in Hanoi. Since Trump left the Vietnamese capital on Thursday, Kim has stepped confidently into the spotlight. He spent his last day in Hanoi dedicating a wreath with the message, "I mourn the heroes and patriotic martyrs," to the monument of war heroes and martyrs. Later in the morning, he oversaw the presentation of a large wreath at the mausoleum of Vietnam's national hero, Ho Chi Minh. Kim paid his respects along with his entourage before making his way into the mausoleum, where Ho's embalmed body is on permanent display. After a packed morning, Kim headed back to Dong Dang village at the Vietnam-China border at around noon and boarded his private bulletproof train for a 60-plus hour ride home to Pyongyang. Kim has seemingly emerged unscathed from the diplomatic wreckage on Thursday, despite suggestions from his camp that he may have lost the will for diplomacy. That's after talks broke down between Kim and Trump in a dispute over how much Washington should provide Pyongyang in return for nuclear disarmament steps. Crucially for his image at home, Kim stood firm on his demands for the relief of sanctions imposed over a nuclear program that Pyongyang says it built in the face of unrelenting U.S. hostility aimed at ending its leadership. Many political watchers say Kim has demonstrated that he is capable of portraying himself as the charismatic head of a nuclear-armed power instead of a reclusive pariah who starves his people in order to build nuclear warheads and missiles.
The U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces say they expect the battle to take Islamic State's last territorial enclave to be over soon. This, according to SDF officials. The United Nations warned of a humanitarian crisis due to civilians caught in the crossfire.
The UN in Syria remains very gravely concerned about the civilians fleeing the last ISIL-Daesh-held areas of Al-Baghous in rural Deir ez-Zor Governorate, following sustained and intense hostilities in this area. In the last week alone, approximately 13,000 people, 90% of them women and children, have arrived at the Al-Hol camp in Al-Hasakeh Governorate. Many of them have arrived exhausted, hungry, and sick. Large number of people continue to arrive at the site on a daily basis. The site is now operating at well above capacity.
The SDF began a final assault to capture the enclave at Baghuz. It aims to wipe out the last vestige of territorial rule by ISIS that once spanned a third of Syria and Iraq. Several hundred people have fled the tiny cluster of hamlets and farmland around Baghuz, a Syrian village on the Euphrates River. Some were ISIS fighters or civilians. All surrendered to SDF forces.
Still to come on the main news tonight. Last day on the job for Deputy Commissioner before becoming new Ombudsman. SpaceX crew capsule blasts off on test run to International Space Station. And glory for Hong Kong cycling queen Sarah Lee at the World Championships.
I have never done anything this important in my entire life.
It's a rocky road.
This is my worst nightmare.
Oh dear. To being named.
A remarkable, delicious dish.
Thank you, Chef.
Monday, MasterChef Junior, Season 5, at 8:30 on Pearl. The largest cave castle in the world is Slovenia's Plejama Castle. What secrets, intrigue, and natural mysteries do these mountains protect? Tuesday, Oriental Watch Company Spectacular Tuesday presents Wild Castles at 9:35 on Pearl.
寶、細寶、大寶、大細都保。銀行有存款就自動受保，保利沽達港幣50萬，其他貨幣存款一樣保。存款受法律保障。
So, my favorite hotel in Paris is definitely Hotel Delia. But since I've discovered Trivago, I asked myself, why didn't I compare prices for this hotel before? It's so easy. Hotel Trivago.
卓遠 Accolade 香港商標註冊2500蚊，中國商標2000蚊，美國商標6500蚊，歐盟商標11500蚊，提供全球商標註冊服務，免費檢索，請電35212999。
And you? What would you do for love? Miss Dior, the new eau de toilette.
We're the people that do. We do ideas. We do innovation. We do fitness, because health is the ultimate wealth. We do good food, because our bodies deserve it. We do money, because thinking ahead leads to a brighter future. We do love. We do family. We do life.
I couldn't get him to eat anything else.
What appears to be fussy eating could be the symptom of a deeply entrenched psychological disorder.
He went blind from malnutrition.
It has a heightened sense of kind of anxiety and refusal to it that most parents know isn't right.
Wednesday, the truth about fussy eaters at 8:30 on Pearl's Wellbeing.
Welcome back. The city's first female deputy commissioner of police, Winnie Chiu, retired today to take up her position as the ombudsman next month. Pinky Wong reports.
I always have a very strong sense of justice throughout my life.
These are the principles which Winnie Chiu believes have served her well. She started as an inspector at 20 years old back in 1983. She ended her 36-year career in the police force as the first woman to reach the rank of deputy commissioner. The 56-year-old says the last day of work brings mixed feelings. Chiu served in various roles throughout her career, including criminal intelligence and narcotics. The most memorable experience, according to her, was taking part in the security arrangements for the 1997 handover ceremony. It was unprecedented, so I felt worried and anxious. Another notable memory might be the 79 days of the Occupy movement. The then senior assistant commissioner was the one who spoke frequently to the media. She thinks relations between police and citizens have become less intense since then. Chiu said she was headhunted for her new position and is looking forward to the role.
I think my character and my values are in line with what an ombudsman should have. I feel very honored to be appointed as the next ombudsman, and I will endeavor to work closely with the team in the Ombudsman Office to be an independent, impartial ombudsman and work without fear or favor.
Chiu will take over from Connie Lau for a 5-year term starting April 1st. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
The Link REIT will be increasing rents for its more than 60,000 parking spaces next month. Protesters today urged the developer to freeze its parking rents. Kana Chiu reports.
Around a dozen members of the Link Monitoring Group petitioned the Link Real Estate Investment Trust (REIT) this morning to freeze rent fees for its parking spaces. Next month, the developer will be increasing monthly parking fees for private cars by around 12.7% on average. The increase is roughly 8% for van and motorcycle spaces.
A lot of citizens to reflect that the rise of the rent of the car park is too heavy for them. For example, in Yau Tong Cochran Estate, the rent is already $3,800, and after 12% of rise, it will become over $4,000.
He criticized the price hike for exceeding inflation by a lot, bringing some of the rents above that of private estate parking lots. At present, there are around 61,000 parking spaces managed by the Link REIT, mainly serving public estate residents and professional drivers. This includes the parking lot at Chuk Yuen North Estate, where rents will go up to $3,200 a month after the rise. That's 45% more than what is charged at a nearby private estate, Choi Chuk Garden. This man has 2 cars parked at Link REIT's Temple Mall parking lot. He noted the more than $7,000 parking rent he pays is equivalent to him renting a flat somewhere. Link REIT says the fee adjustment is necessary due to persistent changes in wages, maintenance, and other operational costs. Kana Chiu, TVB News.
A worker was killed by a falling wooden batten at a construction site in Kwun Tong. The incident happened at around 10:30 this morning. Sources say the victim, working on the 8th floor, was hit by an object and then fell 2 stories down. He was sent to a nearby hospital, United Hospital, after being found unconscious. He was certified dead at the hospital. The Labor Department is looking into the incident. The project's developer said $1 million of death gratuity will be given to the victim's family.
Elon Musk's SpaceX has successfully launched an unmanned crew capsule bound for the International Space Station. It marks a major step towards NASA's goal of reviving the U.S. human spaceflight program this year.
NASA really focused on going back to the moon and to Mars. And so we're really set up for a very exciting, next couple of decades. And I think this is really the beginning. I think people will look back at the space program and say the first 50 years, that was one type of space program, and the next 50 years will be a very different type of space program. It's a very exciting time to be going into the space business.
SpaceX's 16-foot-tall Crew Dragon capsule was launched on the back of a Falcon 9 rocket from Florida's Kennedy Space Center shortly after 4 p.m. Hong Kong time. The 3-member crew of the ISS is expected to greet the capsule, which is carrying 400 pounds of supplies and test equipment, sometime tomorrow evening. NASA awarded SpaceX and Boeing $6.8 billion to build competing rocket capsule systems to launch astronauts into orbit from American soil for the first time since the U.S. Space Shuttle program was retired from service in 2011. It's aimed at ending U.S. reliance on Russian rockets for rides to the $100 billion ISS.
European Union officials say they're ready to give Britain more guarantees that the Irish backstop is only intended to be temporary. That arrangement is designed to prevent a hard border between Ireland and British-ruled Northern Ireland if there is no trade deal after Brexit. Speaking in Northern Ireland, the Prime Minister said he thinks a no-deal Brexit is unlikely.
I don't want to say too much about it at this stage, but I think that the United Kingdom crashing out of the European Union without a deal on the 29th of March is unlikely. I think we either will have a deal or we'll have an extension. But as is always the case, we have to work hard to achieve that withdrawal agreement to get it ratified, but also prepare for the worst case scenario should that arise.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has said if British lawmakers reject her withdrawal agreement again on March 12th, there will be then another vote on whether to ask the EU for a delay in Brexit. All right, Jeff, over to you for sports.
Thank you. Hong Kong's Sarah Lee was golden in Poland, claiming the women's sprint title at the World Championships. The 31-year-old won the first 2 races in a best-of-3 final over Australia's Stephanie Morton. Previously, Lee earned 2 bronze medals in the discipline. She also claimed the 500-meter time trial crown in 2013. Lee will participate in the Keirin event later today. She won bronze in that discipline at the 2012 London Olympics. To tennis, Roger Federer is a win away from his 100th career ATP title. The Swiss beat Croatia's Borna Coric to reach the Dubai Championship final. He now plays Greece's Stefanos Tsitsipas, who knocked Federer out of the Australian Open in January.
Completely different conditions to some extent. He had a tough match against Monfils tonight, and he's won also last week in Marseille, so he's really having a great couple of weeks now, and I hope I can play maybe a little bit better than I did in Melbourne, but I think it's going to be tough because Stefanos really has got the confidence right now.
Meanwhile, Nick Kyrgios made the final of the Mexico Championship after a 3-set win over John Isner. The Australian won the decider in a tiebreak. The 23-year-old Australian picked up wins over multiple Grand Slam winners Stan Wawrinka and Rafa Nadal earlier in the tournament. Kyrgios faces world number 3 Alex Zverev for the title in Acapulco. To basketball, the Milwaukee Bucks are the first team to clinch an NBA playoff spot after a 131-120 win over the LA Lakers. Eric Bledsoe led the Bucks with 31 points. On the same day, he agreed to a 4-year, $70 million extension. Milwaukee has the best record in the league at 48-14. Meanwhile, the Toronto Raptors picked up a 119-117 win over the Portland Trail Blazers. Kawhi Leonard scored a game-high 38 points, including a last-second shot to give the Dinos the victory. Brendan Rodgers spoke for the first time since leaving Scottish champions Celtic to take over at Leicester. The former Liverpool boss highlighted the highs and lows for the Foxes the past few seasons.
The emotions here on and off the pitch has been, it's been incredible, the journey to win the league and then the real tragic events of earlier on. So I felt I could come in and help. And I've had opportunities to leave in over nearly 3 years at Celtic, but this was an opportunity that I felt was too good to turn down.
In Germany, league-leading Borussia Dortmund suffered a shocking 2-1 defeat to relegation-threatened Augsburg. Ji Dong-won scored twice in the win. Last month, BVB had a 7-point lead in the standings over champions Bayern Munich. The difference is down to 3 and the Bavarians can pull level with Dortmund with a win in their next game.
And that is a wrap of our news.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
Until it